Hello, and thank you for joining me here. If you enjoy mythology and deeper dives like this, consider subscribing and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Most people imagine struggle as something temporary. We work hard, push forward, overcome obstacles, and eventually reach the top of whatever hill we are climbing. That is how we like to think life works. Effort leads to progress. Struggle leads to success. But sometimes the hill is steeper than we expected. Sometimes the goal seems to move further away the closer we get. The effort continues, the struggle repeats, and the victory we imagined never quite arrives. The ancient Greeks told a story about a man who lived that reality forever. His name was Sisyphus. In the myth, he is condemned to push a massive stone up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down before he ever reaches the top. It is one of the most famous punishments in mythology. But the story raises a quieter question. Was the boulder truly a punishment? Or was it simply the final form of the life Sisyphus had already chosen to live? Before he became the man pushing the stone, Sisyphus was a king. He ruled the city of Corinth and was known throughout the Greek world for one defining trait. He was extraordinarily clever. In many myths, cleverness is a gift that helps heroes overcome impossible odds. But Sisyphus used it differently. He used it to manipulate situations, outwit rivals, and bend rules to his advantage. The ancient writers often described him as one of the most cunning men who had ever lived. Nothing was accepted at face value. Every situation was a puzzle to solve, every obstacle something to outmaneuver. This cleverness made Sisyphus powerful, but it also placed him in constant conflict with the forces that governed the world around him. Where others accepted limits, Sisyphus looked for ways around them. Where others respected the authority of the gods, Sisyphus tested it. And over time, that habit of defiance would become the defining pattern of his life. Because Sisyphus was not simply trying to succeed. He was trying to prove that even the rules of the world itself could be outsmarted. One of the first moments that revealed this pattern came when Sisyphus crossed paths with the king of the gods himself, Zeus. Zeus had secretly abducted a river nymph and carried her away, believing no one had seen what happened. But Sisyphus had been watching. When the nymph's father searched desperately for answers, Sisyphus offered the truth, though not freely. In exchange for revealing Zeus's actions, he demanded something for himself, a permanent spring of fresh water for his city of Corinth. The bargain worked. The father received the truth, the city received its water, and Sisyphus once again proved that cleverness could turn even the secrets of the gods into opportunity. But in doing so, he also crossed an invisible line. Exposing the actions of a god was not simply cleverness, it was defiance. And in Greek mythology, defiance against the gods rarely goes unanswered. Zeus did not ignore the insult. To remind Sisyphus that even the cleverest mortal could not escape the limits of life, he sent Thanatos to take him to the underworld. But Sisyphus treated death the same way he treated every other obstacle, as a puzzle to solve. When Thanatos arrived, Sisyphus pretended curiosity about the chains the god carried, asking him to demonstrate how they worked. The moment Thanatos revealed their function, Sisyphus used them to bind death itself. With Thanatos imprisoned, death vanished from the world. People were wounded but never died. Soldiers fought battles that could not end, and the natural order of life began to collapse. For a brief moment, Sisyphus had accomplished something extraordinary. He had not merely escaped death, he had stopped it entirely. But like every victory in Sisyphus's life, this triumph could only last for so long before the balance of the world demanded to be restored. Eventually, the disruption became impossible to ignore. With no one able to die, the natural balance of the world began to unravel, and the gods quickly realized what had happened. The war god Ares finally intervened, freeing Thanatos and restoring death to the world. This time, there was no escape. Sisyphus was taken to the underworld and judged like every other mortal. But even here, he had prepared another trick. Before dying, Sisyphus had secretly instructed his wife not to perform the proper burial rites for him. When he arrived in the underworld, he complained that his wife had dishonored him by refusing to give him the funeral he deserved. Appealing to the queen of the underworld, Persephone, Sisyphus asked permission to return briefly to the world of the living so he could punish his wife and ensure the rituals were completed. Persephone agreed, but once Sisyphus returned to the world above, he simply refused to go back. For a time, it seemed like Sisyphus had won again. He had exposed a god, imprisoned death itself, escaped the underworld, and returned to the world of the living through nothing more than cleverness and deception. Each victory proved the same thing. The rules that governed the world could be bent if you were intelligent enough to find the weakness in them. But there was a pattern hidden inside those victories. None of them truly changed the outcome. Every triumph only delayed what had been waiting for him from the beginning. Death had been stopped, but only briefly. The underworld had been escaped, but only temporarily. The struggle Sisyphus waged against the limits of existence never truly ended. It simply repeated itself in new forms, over and over again. And eventually the gods decided that if Sisyphus insisted on living his life as a struggle without end, they would give him exactly that. When the gods finally brought Sisyphus back to the underworld, they chose a punishment unlike any other. He was forced to push a massive stone up the side of a steep hill. The task required all of his strength, all of his determination, every ounce of effort he could summon. Slowly, step by step, he would push the boulder toward the summit. And just as he neared the top, just as success seemed within reach, the stone would slip from his grasp and roll all the way back down to the bottom. Then Sisyphus would descend the hill and begin again. There would be no completion, no victory, no final moment where the work was finished. The struggle would repeat forever. It was a punishment designed not simply to cause suffering, but to trap Sisyphus inside an effort that could never truly succeed. But the punishment the gods chose was not random. The endless climb mirrored the life Sisyphus had already lived. Throughout his life, he had struggled against every limit placed before him, pushing against the authority of the gods, the inevitability of death, and the rules that governed the world. Each time he thought he had reached the top, each time he believed he had outsmarted fate, the victory slipped away and the struggle began again. The boulder simply made that pattern visible. Every push up the hill echoed the choices he had made while he was alive. Every fall of the stone repeated the same truth he had tried to avoid, that some limits cannot be escaped forever. In that sense, the gods did not create Sisyphus's struggle. They only gave it a form that would never end. The myth of Sisyphus forces a difficult question about the nature of struggle itself. Effort, determination, and persistence are often celebrated as virtues, but the story suggests that struggle alone does not guarantee meaning. Sisyphus spent his life fighting every obstacle placed before him, outwitting death, defying the gods, and refusing to accept the limits of being human. Yet none of those victories truly changed his fate. They only delayed it. In the end, the struggle he believed defined his strength became the prison he could never escape. The ancient Greeks may have told this story as a warning about arrogance and defiance, but it also reflects something deeper about human experience. A life spent pushing endlessly against everything around us can become a cycle without progress, effort without purpose, motion without meaning. And that is the quiet lesson hidden inside the image of Sisyphus and his stone. Struggle itself is not enough, because struggle without purpose can become endless. Which leaves one final question behind. Did Sisyphus ever actually win? During his life, he exposed a god, imprisoned death itself, and escaped the underworld through nothing more than cleverness and persistence. For a time, each victory must have felt like proof that the limits of the world could be beaten. But every triumph eventually led him back to the same place. Death returned, the underworld reclaimed him, and the struggle began again. In the end, the gods did not invent a new punishment for Sisyphus. They simply made the pattern of his life eternal. The stone rolls back down the hill, and Sisyphus begins the climb again, just as he always had. Because the man who spent his life pushing against every limit was never going to stop pushing. And so the story leaves us with a final reflection. Sisyphus was not condemned to struggle because he failed. He was condemned to struggle because struggle was the only way he knew how to live.